I'm down here at the North Carolina site today for the first time in quite a long time. I don't know exactly, probably been like at least 3 weeks since the last time I was down here. And I'm in my sunchoke patch, Jerusalem artichoke. You can see what's left of the dormant stalks, and I'm going through here digging up the tubers. Now, by no means am I trying to get all of them, and even if I wanted to, I don't think I could. If you're not familiar with this plant, this is a native plant in the sunflower family known for its tubers that are edible and for being extremely hardy, drought tolerant, and very prolific. This plant produces tons of these tubers. Once you plant it somewhere, it's very hard to actually get rid of it. So basically what I'm doing, I'm going in with my shovel, pardon the wind, and this is really sandy soil here that I've been working for a few years. This year I wasn't really working it very intentionally, but there is organic matter building up. You can see the color is pretty nice. It's certainly improving, getting darker in color. And I'm just going through and grabbing the tubers like so. Just kind of come in, root around in here. If I'm finding it that it's tough, I'll bring the shovel and loosen a little bit more. Right there, some more tubers, add them in here. This is an amazing, amazing plant. You know, I put very little effort into establishing this patch. I pretty much had some compost down and some wood chips where I was establishing a garden bed. You know, I'd killed the grass and whatnot, plopped a few tubers in the fall, mulch on top, walked away. That's it. And this patch has been going for several years now on its own. I didn't do any maintenance to it this year. As you can see, I haven't weeded, right? There's grass and other weeds and things moving in, but the plants do just fine. Now, these tubers are excellent human food. They also make very good animal food. So I'm going to eat some. We're going to experiment with feeding some to the chickens and all that sort of stuff. I'm also taking some of these tubers and planting more of them in other places here at the farm to spread them around so that we always have some whenever we want or need it. Let me get back to digging in here. I'll try to show you guys the yield from roughly just this little patch. You can see, I don't know, it's probably like a 5 by 5 foot area roughly. Then, like I said, it's, you know, it hasn't been weeded. It's not entirely sunchokes. I think maybe we'll include a little bit of an update just walking around the site, seeing what the rest of the site looks like this time of year once we get done harvesting. But let me get back to that. I've got the root mass of this one almost entirely flipped over, and I've already pulled a lot of big tubers out of here, but you can see just how many tubers. Generally, on at least the variety of sunchoke that I have that I got from a friend of mine, most of them seem to be concentrated around the root mass, but they send them out pretty far from the main plant. So again, I'm not going for a total harvest here. We're leaving plenty for the wildlife to enjoy and to create more for next year. And pretty much patch empty. Now you can see there's still some stalks. I didn't do a total harvest, and there's still more little ones as we go out that way, kind of mixed in with some sorghum and some weeds and whatnot. We got almost a full bucket of tubers, and it took less than 10 minutes. So really, really easy calories here. All right, the wind is continuing, but I'm also out here harvesting sorghum. As you can see here, we've got quite a few good heads of sorghum all throughout this patch. Basically, I scattered a row of seed here, and I scattered a bunches of cover crop seed over in that area early in spring before I moved the nursery up to Virginia. There's more of it over here. And again, like the sunchokes, no weeding. The ground was much more bare when I started this. I had come in and cut the grass pretty low in some areas. Some areas I had just removed the tarps that I used last year to kill the grass. You know, I talked about that in some older videos. You can go back and check out if you're interested. So, you know, for the sorghum seed to take, the ground does have to be relatively bare in order for it to germinate. It's not going to germinate very well in thick grass like what we have now. But again, very low effort. I just scattered some sorghum seed on the ground. Can't get the camera to focus on this stuff. This seed head did not develop super well, but there's some seed there. Sorghum can make a really good flour. It's a really good human food. You can press the canes for sugar used in making molasses. It's really good. I am mostly after this sorghum as an easy way to generate some feed for the chickens. So hardly any time at all in planting the seed. Now I'm coming through and harvesting. Some of these heads are not quite ready. The sorghum was pretty stunted early in the season when we had that drought in June. It was very slow to take off. And so the crop is not probably optimal. Again, no weeding, no irrigation. this is pretty good for me. I'm stoked. I'm more than happy with how this turned out. But if you were trying to grow sorghum and really grow some good sorghum, you know, you would want to take better care of it. Now, as you can see in this part of the patch, didn't do as well. Sorghum is kind of more sparse, a lot more weeds, and most of the sorghum heads are pretty piddly and small. I just came through and picked a lot of little stuff out of this part, but hey, you know, the chickens will still enjoy that. I'm here. It doesn't, you know, doesn't take much time at all to just come down and do that. Normally I do it with the snippers in my other hand, but there's a few decent sized heads in here that I'm gonna come through and grab. Turned into one full bucket of heads of sorghum. Chickens are gonna love that. Anything to help cut down on that commercial grain feed bill. Nothing wrong with a little bit of grain, but it's nice to not have to spend money on it and truck it in from the corn deserts of the Midwest. You know, this is grown in at least a little bit more ecological minded way. This site is by no means the perfect, you know, optimized, regenerative picture, but it's certainly miles ahead of the corn deserts of the Midwest. There's much more diversity and much better soil health going on here than where almost all of the commercial feed is coming from. So, and like I said, it's saving money. I had a pretty massive sunchoke plant growing right here by this barn, and I believe the reason it's so massive is that it had access to a big pile of leaf compost that I had sitting right here. And the rest of the leaf compost I was going to use for nursery activities, but after, you know, as the move was happening, I noticed that fire ants had moved into this area, so this soil has to stay put. It cannot travel anywhere else because I don't want to spread the fire ants. And so I shaped it up into this row, kind of like a big mound here. I took some tubers from that plant, stuck them in here, and I'm also going to stick some elderberry cuttings and some other, maybe some willow cuttings. This area does get kind of wet when it rains because all the roof water drains off from that roof. And then also, if we turn around here, a lot of the rain off of this larger roof also comes down right here. So this gets pretty wet. There's also some evening primrose and other wildflowers that have volunteered in here, as well as like everything else, grass and weeds and all sorts of stuff. So the name of the game with everything here is low maintenance, and I'm basically establishing most of this stuff just for wildlife, for soil health. You know, I might come through and dig some tubers or pick some sorghum and stuff like that here and there as there's excess things that I can harvest. But for the most part, we're doing this just for the sake of doing it. Because if I'm not doing it, it'll look like this behind me. Mowed, dead, or it'll look like if it's just totally left alone and pretty much all we're going to get is like dog fennel, grass, and some sweet gums. If there's anything wrong with dog fennel and sweet gum, they're both native plants, but trying to add diversity wherever we can here in the easiest way possible because I'm not here very often. Overall, this entire site is really about due for either an animal grazing event or a fire to come and rip through. You know, there's a lot of this brown stuff, which would be good fuel for a little fire. We don't want to let too much of it build up, but this would probably be pretty good right now, in my opinion. I'm still pretty amateur at figuring out controlled burns, but, and I wouldn't do it without following the proper safety procedures. We're not here to talk about the details of that right now, but we transition into less of the summer grass here, and it gets more into the cooler season grasses. You can see it kind of greens up in here. But yeah, this whole area definitely could do with fire or a grazing event. Not really sure if or when that'll happen. I'm definitely thinking about it. I also think it's not the end of the world if we go another year or two before we do that. I've got a lot of trees establishing in here. It's kind of hard to see right now because everything's dormant, but you can check out some of the previous videos where I plant some of these trees, where I show some of these trees that are growing. A lot of them are still small. You know, they're still very thin, like the diameter of my finger or thinner. If we could get them a little bit bigger, a lot of them will be able to handle a fire much better, or a grazing event, if, you know, because they'll be taller. But if a fire or animals rip through right now, like this little red bud, would probably be toast. You know, it might sprout back from the roots, but it would certainly kill everything above the ground. Somehow there's still a marigold blooming. Very fascinating how this time of year, I don't know if we've had a hard frost down here or not. I assume we have, but I haven't been following the weather closely down here. You know, up in Virginia, we certainly have had a hard frost. And you can just tell, both on the drive down and walking around here, that although we are pretty dormant here, it's certainly a few steps behind where we're at the Virginia site. Something I noticed is I believe the power line crews have come through here because there's truck tracks in here and a whole lot removed off of this box elder in the fashion that the power line crews will do, where they will only take the absolute minimum of what might impact the line and kind of leave the trees in a pretty ugly looking state. Now this box elder was already very much in decline, on its way out. I'm sure it'll still sprout new sprouts this year, but now that so much of it is opened up and we can see, you can tell why these are such good habitat trees. They don't live super long, they rot out. Look at all the homes inside of this thing for critters. Anyway, we're gonna have a little bit more sun over here. It's not a big deal. The thing that I am concerned with is if they get worried that this is gonna start getting too overgrown, I am afraid that they're gonna come in and spray. You know, I'm not down here often enough to see them and stop them, and it is looking pretty overgrown. To most folks' eyes, that's gonna look like an unmanaged space, and it's not very actively managed, but I am managing it somewhat. I'm certainly not going to let anything grow in there that will get tall enough to impact the power lines. But from their point of view, just driving by, they might not know that. It's not very obvious, I would say. It looks like it just has been overgrown the past year or two and kind of abandoned. So, I don't know, maybe I need to get some signs up or try to get on their no spray list. This is all things I need to look into. That would be really devastating if they came in and sprayed herbicide through here. Now, it would only be in a strip, but it would kill a lot of really nice hazelnuts and elderberries, as well as all the other life growing in there. And out of respect for the soil in this little patch that just fed me all those tubers, we're covering it up with a nice application of leaves to, you know, just protect the soil from compaction, from rain and erosion.